Welcome back to Fly Fishing Hatches Part 12. I'm Raj Kletke, and in this part we'll be tying a couple of flies and getting ready to fish midge hatches. The formal and more complete definition of a midge was presented in my Simple Entomology series. Mainly in that series, and definitely in this series, we'll be using the fisherman's definition that emphasizes anything small that trout may be taking that are not otherwise classified. A few fishermen even call anything small a midge, even if it's a small caddis, but we won't be that generous with the definition. Many fly fishermen are intimidated by midge fishing, but you shouldn't be. Midges and their hatches are extremely common on essentially all trout waters. The hatches occur practically daily, almost year-round, and often last for many hours. So understanding and fishing midge hatches will greatly increase your fly fishing enjoyment for trout. So we should learn more about midges. If you haven't already, please review the 2 videos on midges from my Simple Entomology series. As I was putting together this video, I realized that my Simple Entomology series covered most of the flies that I tie for midges and much about how I fish midge hatches. We'll tie 2 additional midge patterns in this video, but be sure to tie the patterns listed from the previous series as well. Like most midge patterns, all are quite simple, use very little material, and are easy to tie, or at least are easy to tie if you use magnification and good lighting. What I use for magnification and good lighting can be seen in my beginning fly tying series if you're so inclined. So, we said midges are small, but how small? Well, I'm going to be very arbitrary. While larger true midges occur, especially on lakes, most of the midge patterns that we'll be using on streams will be hook sizes 18 and smaller. The most common midge sizes I fish are 20 to 26. Let's quickly tie the 2 new patterns before we start fishing the midge hatches. These were taught to me by a friend that fishes midges in Pennsylvania and is a far better fisherman than I am. These patterns have saved the day for me more than once when fishing midges. This is a size 24 hook, which is my most common size for the starling wrap, but I also tie this in size 26. While originally I tied this with black thread, the first hatch I fished with this had midges with olive bodies, so now I tie it with olive thread, but likely the color doesn't really make a difference. Wrap the threads to the back of the hook and then bring it forward to about 2 eye lengths back from the eye of the hook. Find the smallest starling feathers or other black soft hackle you can find, and stroke the hackle fibers back from the tip to clearly identify how long the fibers are. Usually, I want the fibers to be about a hook gap length or just slightly more. Finding a small enough hackle can be difficult, so usually I pre-cut the fibers to the length I want, tie the hackle in by the tip, and make 2 wraps. I prefer this pre-cutting as for me it is significantly faster, but you can tie in the uncut hackle by the tips also, make 2 wraps, and then cut the fibers to length. In either case, you should end up with a fly that looks something like this. At first I did not like the chopped off look of the hackle, but trout eagerly took this fly, so I have changed my opinion. Use only 2 or less wraps of hackle. You want the hackle to be quite sparse. This may be slightly too dense, and a little sparser might have been a little bit better. Incidentally, when tying with these small hooks, you will drop some. I find that a rare earth magnet embedded in wood tremendously helps in finding and picking up these small flies. The tummel fly is also a simple and effective fly for midge emergencies. There are several patterns that are sometimes called tummel flies, and I believe got their name from being fished on the River Tummel in Scotland. They seem closely related to some of the classic North Country flies and some of Stewart's spider patterns. I'm using a size 20 hook here, but I do tie these from sizes 18 to 24. The most common pattern I fish for midges is tied with black thread. Start your thread near the front of the hook and tie in an extra small silver wire on the near side for ribbing. Take the wire and thread back no more than half the hook shank, commonly even slightly less, and then wind your thread forward to the wire ribbing tie-off point. Put in an extra 3 to 5 wraps because these wraps will unwind as you reverse wind the ribbing. Then the ribbing and your thread will be at the correct tie-off point. So then tie off the ribbing and break off the wire, or use your old scissors to cut the wire. Don't use your good scissors to cut wire. Tie in your hackle, usually I use black, and make 2 wraps before tying off the hackle. Keep the hackle sparse. Put a few thread wraps for a small head and whip finish. The hackle fiber length should be about 1.5 to 2 times the hook gap. This fly is basically a small soft hackle. Sometimes I use a rooster hackle, as I did here, especially if I'm going to be fishing this on faster water, which does happen occasionally. But usually I'll tie this with a starling hackle or other soft hackle. I can usually find a small enough hackle so I don't need to pre-cut the fibers. Depending on what hackle I find, sometimes I tie it in by the tip before taking 2 wraps, and sometimes I strip the base of the junk fibers and then tie it in by the base before taking my 2 wraps. Occasionally I'll even resort to using the distribution wrap if I can't find the proper size soft hackle. I've shown the distribution wrap on multiple previous videos, so I won't repeat it here. The end result is what you want, and like most things in fly tying, can be arrived at in multiple ways. I use a standard dry fly hook, except that I do like the large eye hooks so that I can more easily thread my tippet on the stream. Age does have its issues. I'm speculating that the reason for the bare hook at the back was to add weight and yet tie a small fly on a larger hook. Likely the variety of hooks available when these patterns were first developed was not as great as today. Whatever the reason, trout like it, so I do tie it this way. Now that we have the flies ready, let's fish some midge hatches, which is what we'll be doing next. I'm Rod Skletke, and I'll see you soon.